Hello, everybody. Welcome to this sunny morning in London. Actually, I might have to adjust my blinds at some point because the sun is beating hard. But it's so good to have you here. Retail Bulletin Marketplace Strategy Webinar. It's our first event of 2023, so welcome back. We've got a full calendar for you this year of events running pretty much month in, month out through to November, some virtual like this, some in person. We're doing those again now as well, which is great. And you can see the full calendar of events at theretailbulletin.com and check out all that's coming your way in 2023. But welcome back for our inaugural session of this calendar year. Really good to be here. My name's Darren Williams. I am the Global Head of Leasing for a Barcelona-based orthodontics business called Impress. We have been around a few years now, but we are rolling out fast. We're in 8 countries, rolling out our clinics across many different types of places in Europe and the US. We take a lot of ex-retail space, actually, so part of playing our part in that repurposing of the high street as well. We're up to 9 sites in the UK now, and more on the way as well. So yeah, check us out at Impress. But I also am very happy and delighted to be hosting this Retail Bulletin event, and I've done a few of these over the years, some of you may know. My dog's around, for those of you that are regulars, Scamp, so she may or may not join us at some point. She seems to be very quiet somewhere right now, so just so you're aware, just in case she does appear. And in this virtual world that we got so used to over the last few years, interruptions are welcome. They happen, and so please don't worry about it. To my panelists, if children, animals, spouses decide to join us unexpectedly, bring them into the show. They're all welcome. I'm going to introduce my panel now, if I may, and then we can get into the session proper. And I'll talk to you, the audience, about how you can get involved as well. So firstly, I'm going to ask everyone to say who they are and tell us a little bit about themselves. So I'm going to start, please, with you, Jessica. Hello.
Good morning. I am Jessica Christensen. I am the Regional Vice President for Miracle for the UK and Nordics. And to give a quick overview on my background and experience in Marketplace, before joining Miracle, I spent 6 years inside Zalando's very successful Marketplace, including both of their integrator business, running their in-house integration team, and also their on-site retailer network marketing. Nice to meet everyone today.
It's nice to meet you, and thank you so much for joining us today as well. Looking forward to hearing from you. Tony, let's hear from you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tony Preedy. I'm Managing Director of Frugo, which is a global marketplace, selling retailers' products in 42 countries around the world. I expect we'll talk a bit more about that as the session goes on. But prior to running Frugo, I spent 10 years as the marketing director of a kitchenware business called Lakeland, which, as well as being a big stores-based business, both in the UK and internationally, had a big home shopping business, including trading on marketplaces such as Amazon and eBay. So I've been on both sides of the line, so to speak.
Great. Well, again, very welcome. Thank you for joining us as well today. Look forward to hearing from you. Neil, hello, sir. How are you doing?
Morning, Darren. How are you?
All right. Good.
Thanks for having me here. So I'm interim managing director of a platform called, and a multi-channel live selling platform called LollyShop. We were formerly known as Whoosh, so I kind of say in a slightly Prince-esque business with a business formerly known as Whoosh. Prior to that, I've been in and around marketplaces for years. I've raised funds for them, built them, exited them, and kind of a few messy things in between as well. I've done that in Dubai, in the UK, and across Europe. So yeah, very much part of the marketplace family in the UK at least.
So good to have you back with us, Neil, and look forward, as always, to hearing from you when we get to the questions. Barry, hello.
Good morning. I'm Barry. I'm the CEO of Sol Retail. We are a business that partners with brands all over the world, selling on the marketplaces. We built our business from £10 10 years ago, never taken a loan, an investment or an overdraft. And today we're on track to turning over £22 million in about 17 different countries. Those are Amazon, eBay, Walmart, Allegro's, and many other platforms that we work on and represent and partner lots of different beauty brands around the world. So that's us. Hopefully we can add a little bit of value from the brand's perspective on marketplaces.
I've got no doubt you'll add value. So thank you, sir, and looking forward to hearing from you. Last but not least, Glenn, tell us about you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. I'm Glenn Stockel. I lead Plain and Simple. We're a marketplace connecting online DIY customers with trusted local builders merchants for delivery of big and bulky building materials right to their door.
Very welcome. And thank you for waiting patiently there till the end. And I look forward to hearing from you as we get to you during the session. One other thing to mention as a little thank you, a big thank you actually, Jessica and to the team at Miracle. They've actually sponsored the session today, and I really appreciate that. We are very lucky that we get to work with such fabulous sponsors. We can't do it without you, basically. So thank you. As always, your support is much appreciated. Audience, this is for you, this webinar. So the voice I want you to hear the least is mine. So we're going to move to our lovely panelists any second now, but we love you to get involved. And we've always been really overwhelmed actually by audience participation over the years that we get via our events. So get involved. Somewhere on your device there is a Q&A button. Have a look for that and use it. You can either ask a panelist a question direct, or you can maybe just have a general question that you want the panel to address, or you might want to comment on something that's just been said. Whatever goes into that Q&A, I promise, as your moderator, will be addressed, and I will make sure it ends up in the right place. So use it, get that Q&A working, and I will make sure it all flows nicely. Let's get started. So Jessica, in the spirit of kicking things off and me shutting up, I'm going to come to you first and we can hear from you. So, you know, in the webinar itself, we're talking about, you know, e-commerce and online marketplaces and benefits for retailers. In the context of the current cost of living crisis, I guess, and post-pandemic and uncertainty in this crazy world we've been living in for a few years, why should retailers invest in a dropship or a marketplace program?
Yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts on this. I think, you know, sort of just to open, you know, you mentioned who Miracle is, but we're sort of the global leading marketplace platform. So we service over 350 enterprises worldwide to manage their marketplace and dropship business, including, you know, some referenceable brands here in the UK like ASOS, Superdrug, and also H&M and B&Q. So I think, like, to give you a reference point around where some of the data that I'll share is coming from, it's coming from, you know, our customers and how we look into why they invest in marketplace. So a couple of, I would say, sort of quick wins that we see are around profitability and growth. So of course, everyone saw that massive spike during the pandemic, but what we've seen is that those growth trends continue more so for marketplaces than they do for traditional e-commerce. So to just quote a couple of stats, you know, marketplaces are 3 times more profitable than 1P. Traffic growth, we continue to see that it's growing at a rate that's 4 times that of global online retailers. So we're continuing to see that growth. To dig a little bit into the consumer side of the business, every year we do a survey called the State of Online Marketplace. And to share just a few UK specific data points from this one that we just did in January, a couple of key points I would say are that consumers are looking for value right now. You know, so I think when we think about, you know, they're going to go online, they're going to find the best price. Marketplace allows you to be more competitive. So, you know, when brands are setting the price across multiple channels, if, you know, especially in the UK, there's a lot of loyalty schemes with specific retailers. So it allows them to take advantage of, you know, pricing that allows them to be more competitive. And when they're looking for that value online during times of high inflation, they're also looking to spend more money online. So those retailers that choose to have an online presence and expand it via marketplace, I think are going to continue to win. And then I would say the final sort of point that we see continuing to be a trend as we look at consumers is that they're more comfortable shopping on marketplaces. They even say they prefer shopping on marketplaces. So those are just a few of the key things that I would say as we see, you know, the world kind of coming out post-pandemic. yes, e-commerce is going to continue to be super important, but how retailers continue to grow into being more future-proof and investing in technologies that continue to help them grow. I think marketplace will be a key piece of that.
And cost effective, right, as well?
Yep. Profitability.
Yeah, because the profitability and cash is king right now in terms of this kind of world we live in. Hey, the UK inflation rate dropped by 0.4% today, so you know.
Yeah.
Some little small specks of good news, but you know, joking aside, it's important, right? Every single penny or cent counts at the moment for every business.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for opening. I'm going to come back to you as well. Take a sip of a cup of tea or coffee or something, and I'll be back with you very, very shortly. Questions are coming in. I see you. I'm going to do a first round of questions with all of our panelists, and then I'll start to deal with the Q&A as well. Tony, coming to you, sir. What's your view? Advantages, disadvantages of adding a marketplace offer to an e-commerce site?
Well, I absolutely agree with what Jessica said about the state of the industry. E-commerce is booming, and the fastest growing segment of e-commerce is marketplaces, and marketplaces are growing faster than first-party e-commerce. But it doesn't automatically follow that that means the retailers should become a marketplace. So I think there's certainly a very strong case for selling on marketplaces, but whether or not you choose to become a marketplace, I think is going to be a question that is particular to each particular business. So if you think about what a retailer is it's effectively sourcing products, either its own or it's acquiring that product and it's putting together it into an assortment. And it then decides whether or not to extend that using dropshipping. And dropshipping has been a very successful business model for retailers to add more choice to their retail offer for many, many years. And that obviously gives them an advantage of having less inventory risk. They can generate incremental margin if they can fill out their assortment with product that's stocked in somebody else's warehouse. And arguably, they can complete an offer in a way that's more economical to do so than necessarily owning all of that stock themselves. So I'm fully subscribed to the drop shipping model, if you will, and certainly utilized it substantially when I was at Lakeland. But I think if you then extend that to becoming a marketplace, there are some issues you need to consider, not least the fact that whereas with a dropshipping model, you're effectively owning the curation of the assortment and you're setting price and you have substantial control therefore over what is sold. With a marketplace model, typically you don't. So effectively you're losing control over ranging, you're losing control over pricing, you're potentially taking on some reputational risk because you're effectively placing your brand in the hands of a third party. That often comes with extra costs, hidden costs, around customer service that are quite complicated to resolve. So it's not automatically obvious that marketplaces are a brilliant way to add profit. I think they certainly add sales, but I think when you do the whole cost analysis, marketplaces for retailers, I think is going to be something that has to be proven out. And for some retailers, it will prove to be very successful. I think many others will try it and then walk away from it. But certainly the principle of dropshipping, I think, is absolutely well established, and certainly using marketplaces as a way of growing sales by putting your products onto other people's marketplaces is absolutely a well-trodden path. And I guess we'll talk about that a bit later on.
I'm sure we will. Thank you for that input, sir. And I will come back to you shortly in the panel as well. Thank you very much. Neil, I'm going to move on to you, please. Sort of thinking about that, gets banded around a lot, this word, post-pandemic world. I think we can say we're post-pandemic now, please. The nature of how customers shop completely changed. So there used to be kind of convenience in one part and experience in another, and they were quite separate things. But now that seems to have blended. How does that impact the role that social now plays in kind of the purchase funnel now that live selling is part of the mix? Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, for us, we're a live selling focused business, and if I had my mum here, she'd definitely ask what on earth's that. And the easiest way I explained it would be to look at QVC and imagine it's in a live stream on a social media channel that she's not on. But we're kind of following the trends of where customers are wanting to shop. And one of the things that we typically state is that we are the bridge between where brands need to be and where customers are. Customers are on social media. You look at some of the stats. So 9 out of 10 Gen Z shoppers under the age of 24 will only buy something from a brand that they follow on social media. 97% of Gen Z shoppers say that social is their main source of shopping inspiration. So if it's simply a case of following the customers of where they are and how they want to shop, then live selling becomes a natural extension of that. And I guess to a certain extent, Jessica mentioned it earlier on, that sort of pandemic-induced spike in e-commerce sales then obviously plateaued off, but we haven't necessarily seen the dip that people were expecting. What we have seen is customers really kind of wanting to move away from that kind of 2D, if that's the right expression, way of shopping, i.e. on your laptop, and really wanting to engage with brands and having a level of sort of authenticity and discovery. And that's really where live shopping came from. And it was China really and Taobao that led the sort of the charge for this. And that was actually during the pandemic. And kind of depending on who you read and what you believe, live selling is either going to be the sort of panacea of e-commerce over the next 5 to 10 years, or going to be a bit of a damp squib. And now, hopefully we think it's the former. Yesterday, Facebook announced that, and Instagram both announced that they're stepping back from live selling, whereas the day before, QVC said it's absolutely the future of their business. So it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. But yeah, for us, it's really around trying to, I guess, bring a lot of those brands that either haven't yet got their heads around multi-marketplace selling and want to showcase their brands to customers in a slightly more, I guess, authentic manner. You only have to look at there's a hashtag called TikTok made me buy it. It's got 42.2 billion views so far as of last week. So it's definitely where people are. I think the technology needs to, continue to improve and allow that sort of level of interaction without someone having to hold a phone over here and type some questions and look at a camera over here. So it's all a little bit clunky at the moment still, I think. But it's definitely a very, very interesting space for us to be in.
So hang on, hashtag TikTok made me buy it. Did I hear you say 42 billion views? B for billion.
42.2 billion views as of last week. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, every day is an education. I never knew. Wow, that's an incredible. I never knew. Well, firstly, I never knew the hashtag existed, and secondly, I never knew that number of views was probably even possible. So, wow, there you go. Thank you, sir. Everyone's furiously now looking at hashtag TikTok made me buy it in the background. So I will be looking later. Thank you for that. Take a sip of something nice. I'll come back to you shortly as well. Barry, over to you, sir. We talked about this marketplace advantages, disadvantages. So I want to continue that theme a little bit with you as well. But how does bricks, mortar and marketplace work? Can it work?
Yeah, great question. Yes, it can work. I think if you look at the scenario since post-Brexit, post-pandemic, post everything that's going on at the moment, then I think people are looking and brands are looking for quicker ways to grow their business and get their brand seen and live across the planet. So when you look at bricks and mortar, traditional sales, obviously brands want to be in stores. There's no question that still hasn't changed. Having their brands in stores is their number one priority to drive their business, because they believe that's where they can get the growth, that's where they can get the traction and the brand advertising as a whole. However, with marketplaces coming on now, lots of online marketplaces from big named retailers, the questions that the brands are asking are, why would I do this? Why would I not be in store? Why would I be on platforms and on their marketplaces? And the questions and the answers are quite simple, but there is a balance to be had. And so my opinion is this: brands want control. And marketplaces tend to historically not give them that. So they want to be able to control how their brand looks and feels and drives on any platform around their planet. And it's important that they can control their brand in markets in America for pricing, etc. And this is where the marketplaces have been failing the brands, have not been giving them that control. And so they're fearful of that. And they're fearful that they go on marketplaces with marketplaces that are bricks and mortar, that they'll never end up in store. So I think there's a fine balance between getting on the marketplaces, not having things like the shelving fees and other costs and implications for the brands, but at the same time, being able to get into a well-known retailer on a marketplace very, very quickly is a big win, because at the moment, obviously for bricks and mortar, it takes a long time to get them on the shelf, whereas in the marketplace, they can go very, very quickly. But it's this control piece that's the challenging bit, where you have distributors and wholesalers and people buying it in stores at discounted rate and putting it on marketplaces. It's this control that the brands are very, very nervous about. And I think if marketplaces can work the way to control that and work with it, then those brands will definitely come streaming into those marketplaces.
Thank you, sir. I'll come back to you shortly as well, but yeah, certainly some food for thought there. If you are a retailer and watching this today as well, and you are a mix of bricks and mortar and so on, and you're using marketplaces, we'd love to hear from you. So please do add any comments into the chat or Q&A function as well. Glenn, hello. You've been waiting so patiently there. Unpack the different marketplaces for me, if you would. So generalist marketplaces, specialist marketplaces. What's the difference, and why would you consider a specialist over a generalist? Help me unpack that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. We've talked today about the rise of marketplaces and the consumer shift towards preferring to shop on marketplaces. But I think it's important to kind of distinguish between these generalist marketplaces. And, the classic example would be Amazon. They cover a multitude of sectors. They've got a really broad horizontal product range. And then you've got specialist marketplaces, and they really commit to a specific sector. They've dedicated, specifically to a certain type of merchant, but also a certain type of customer. So if we unpack that for a minute, and we look at both sides there, from a customer perspective, a specialist marketplace is thought through that unique customer journey. So things like what's important to that customer, how do you make discovery and product pages and the whole checkout process as seamless as possible for them? And how do you make the delivery experience as pleasant as possible for specific needs for that product range? For example, delicate items, or maybe some legally controlled items for a marketplace. They need to think through that entire delivery process. And then if you think about from a retailer's perspective, specialist marketplaces has likely thought through those specific pain points. So what are the nuances for those products? Do they need to have unique specifications and images and shipping requirements shown to the merchants, and do you need to control the delivery area? And what are margins like? Can the marketplace give you suggestions in terms of pricing? So when we think about specialist marketplaces, they're really tailored to that specific industry and could be a really, really great partner for a merchant as part of an omni-channel approach.
I got it, but does everyone understand? Do you think everyone understands out there that there was such a thing as generalists and specialists? How does someone distinctly know the difference, unless the marketplace is calling themselves something different?
Yeah, part of it is messaging from the marketplace, and it's actually a trend that we're seeing happen throughout the marketplace. For example, we've got Superdrug with a marketplace of their own for cosmetics, and that made him be a miracle product, Jessica. Bit of a plug for you. Yeah. So consumers are seeing these merge more and more, and I think it's still in its early stages for sure. Definitely in the US, there's been more verticalization of the marketplaces, and I think we're seeing more of that here in the UK.
Got it. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for adding that, and thank you for being so patient. Let's go have a look at the questions. So we've got a couple that have come in so far. So the first one is from VIP. Thank you, VIP, whoever you are. And the question is as follows. How do you approach brands and vendors to join a new marketplace business? What structures are on offer to help deliver vendor partner agreements? I'm going to read that one more time. How do you approach brands and vendors to join a new marketplace business? And what structures are on offer to help deliver vendor partner agreements? Who would like to take that from the panel?
I mean, I can answer how Miracle deals with a platform perspective. I mean, we have thousands of sellers that have already been vetted and have been onboarded into the Miracle system. So if someone comes on board as a new operator, they would have access to that database of, you know, sort of pre-vetted and onboarded sellers. And we sort of use almost like a Tinder between sellers and operators, whereby they can use filters to look at the verticals of sellers that they're interested in, and all the contractual agreements, you know, KYC, everything is all included in the back end. But I think there are a lot of services available as well.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, only to say, Darren, that obviously conventional sales and marketing efforts often drive the seller recruitment to marketplaces, whether they're generalists or specialists. Jessica's made a very important point about KYB, so know your business regulations that are pretty onerous. So, yeah, as an operator of a marketplace, you really need to know who your counterparties are. So that's a very important factor. But the second part of the question, which is about delivering vendor partner agreements, this is more of an issue, I think, for brands, particularly those with established distribution arrangements, particularly if they're international distribution arrangements that might be wholesale or other forms of distribution. Brands need to sort of approach marketplaces with a view as to whether they're selling, owning the proposition, owning the content, but then actually using local existing partnerships to actually fulfill the goods to the customer, or whether they're effectively going into a market over the top of a physical distributor, in which case they sometimes get into difficulties. So I guess there's many answers to the question, but certainly marketplaces can support existing vendor partnership agreements, but the devil's in the detail.
Okay, thank you. The devil's always in the detail, isn't it? Absolutely. So thank you, whoever you are, VIP. I hope that's answered your question for you as well. I'm going to go straight to the other question from the audience, and then we'll do another round of questions with our panel as well. So Mitchell, thank you very much for this question. Panel, fingers first at the ready, buzzer first round. Why do you think marketplaces are the most successful area within the e-commerce industry at the moment? Why do you think marketplaces are the most successful area within the e-commerce industry at the moment? Who wants to take that one? Thank you, Mitchell.
I'll start. I think it's very, very simple in the fact of the marketplaces offer depth of product, depth of choice, good pricing, but most importantly, and I think this is the point that everyone needs to understand from a marketplace point of view, the delivery of the goods. You know, next day delivery, same day delivery, that's making the shopper and the consumer buy the products over anybody else that's buying it. So the logistical move on everything, on top of the opportunity to try new things. You go on to, I mean, you just mentioned Superdrug, I know they're on the call today. You go on to Superdrug Marketplace, you've got an array of brands that you can choose from. They may not be your regular brand, but you have a choice and opportunity to try new things, where you go into a store and you've got limited space and limited opportunity, where the full range is not in those store and on the shelves. So I think you've got the range, the ability, and the speed and the convenience, all the reasons why marketplaces are growing quickly.
I just pick up on that, Barry, as well. You know, talking about brands that you might not know, we work with a lot of independent builders merchants. These are great local merchants that you may not know as a DIYer about these independents. And sometimes if you do know about them, you might be a bit too intimidated to go into them. So a marketplace can democratize things very, very easily for consumers as well, and you know, bring these unknown brands to the public.
Thank you, guys. Go on, Kev, please.
Yeah, just building on that as well. I think it also worth understanding that marketplaces, although Jessica alluded to the fact there's often a little bit of kind of onerous paperwork to do, more often than not, they've done quite a lot of the heavy lifting for you in terms of a brand. So leaning into a marketplace to help them get you more customers, get you greater brand presence online, putting you next to some of your peers that you may or may not be able to do, whether in a physical retail environment. You know, there's a whole lot of upsides there that whilst it takes a little bit of tinkering to get you live, I think there's a whole lot of benefits there that in a way could typically be unseen. So from a brand perspective, it's definitely worth kind of exploring what's out there.
Good stuff. Brilliantly answered, panel. Mitchell, thank you for that question. We've got 2 more questions that have come in. I'm going to get to you after another round of questions with our panel as well. Thank you. Great audience participation. We love to see it. Thank you. Keep it coming. Jessica, I'm going to come back to you for another round of questions if I can. What retailers are looking for best practice, I guess, from webinars like this, and what best practice would you recommend to retailers who are looking to get started in the platform business, improve profitability, mitigate risk and cost, and so on? What advice would you offer them?
Yeah, so we generally have 11. I'm not going to go through all 11, don't worry. But I think, especially given kind of some of the questions that are being asked, I would say 2 that we often hear people are scared of, or the concept of cannibalization, and then also a lot about curation. So I think sort of choosing the right tools to enable your marketplace is important. So, earlier Amazon was mentioned. You don't have to be Amazon to compete with Amazon. So you can stay true to your DNA. So if you're Saks or your Macy's and you want to only, have particular brands and sellers on your marketplace, a product like Miracle allows you to have control over that. So, things like, you mentioned earlier, brand imagery and content, absolutely a platform like Miracle gives you control to submit the best possible content to put on the marketplace, and it gives the retailer control over the approval process. And now we're at the point with the platform where someone can do that in as little as 5 hours if you're on a Shopify platform. And, we use AI to speed up the onboarding process. So it's not the sort of onerous situation that we had about 10 years ago. So what I would say is a focus on brand DNA is a best practice. Like, who do you have the right to sell to? Who is your end customer? And how do you want to curate and deliver that experience is key. I would say what we've also seen across some of the most successful launches, B&Q is one that I would mention, is bringing a wide variety of stakeholders to the table. And that's at the top, in the middle, all across the business, so that everyone really gets on board and embraces the marketplace concept, and that they get involved in it. And then again, I think that also kind of helps with that cannibalization piece, because kind of understanding how marketplace fits into a traditional bricks and mortar or e-commerce business is super important. I know, for instance, with ASOS, that's been kind of a key piece of their ongoing strategy. And then I would finally say one of the key things is, you've mentioned Superdrug. I think one of the reasons people know about Superdrug is because they've talked about it. So when you decide to do a marketplace and you decide to go on in, give it a strategy, talk about it, shout about it, because I do think that where we've really seen, traffic being driven, and that means like inbound leads to us or activity or interest in it, it's been driven by a really incredible marketing strategy that was put together by the marketplace that was launching. So those are just a few. We have 11 online in case anyone is interested in the other ones.
How do people get in touch? They want to find out about the 11, I will call them. They via LinkedIn or via Retail Bulletin?
I mean, you can check out the Miracle Marketplace and search for enterprise marketplace best practices. We've got loads of studies and things you can download. So, yeah. Oh, okay. And Karen says you guys will also help with that. So thanks, awesome. Karen.
Thank you, Jessica. That's great. Tony, coming to you. Kind of 2 questions in one here. What's a third-party marketplace, and what is the advantage and disadvantage of using one of those as an additional channel to market?
Well, by definition, a third-party marketplace is distinct from your own business. You're selling on it. You're not selling to it. So effectively, you own the product until the moment that the sale takes place to the consumer. Some of those marketplaces operate logistics services. Amazon famously provides fulfillment by Amazon as a service, and so the goods can travel into the Amazon warehouse and be dispatched by them when the sale is made. But lots of marketplaces operate with the shipping, the responsibility of the vendor. Frugo operates that way. And in terms of why do it? Well, essentially, it's reach. You're putting your products in front of more potential buyers. Frugo is operating in 42 countries, and so you as a seller can have product in the UK, which you think of as product priced in sterling and described in the English language, But with Frugo, you get that in front of billions of potential consumers. We're serving thousands of advertisements every second of the day somewhere around the world to somebody searching for products just like the ones that you sell. And the beauty of using a marketplace model is it effectively provides risk-free incremental sales, because having committed to put your products on that marketplace, you only incur a cost for selling that product when a sale actually takes place. So you haven't got any upfront marketing costs. You're not incurring CPC or whatever it is. So you can think of it essentially as an agent selling your products, where you only pay that agent's wages when they actually deliver you something positive. And consequently, it can be thought of as like a profit tap or way of propping up the P&L of a retail business, because you're guaranteed profit. So long as every transaction produces more gross margin than the commission you're paying, which will virtually always be true, then effectively every transaction is an incremental addition to the bottom line. And I guess that's my final point, which is when selecting marketplaces to work with, it's rational to be on several, and indeed to keep on adding marketplaces until such time as adding more adds no value. Frugo succeeds partly because we add something very different. We're providing an international dimension, but I'd still encourage domestic, UK sellers to list on UK marketplaces other than Amazon and eBay, because they will reach incremental consumers by doing so. But then I'd also say, obviously, list on Frugo, and then you can reach the world.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir, indeed. And we will be coming back to you shortly, I'm sure, as well. Thank you for explaining and unpacking that for us as well. Neil, we referenced social before when we were speaking. How crucial is that kind of social piece to the overall shopping customer journey? And I guess crucially, the retention of customers and monetizing them as well.
Yeah, look, I've got to caveat the fact I'm far from a social expert. You only need to look at my Instagram to realise that. But I think, you know, we're living in a kind of, a friend of mine wrote a book about the nudge economy, but I think it speaks true and holds true when you're thinking about how you retain customers now. So social isn't there to drive, you know, oodles more traffic that you wouldn't have had pre kind of social days, but it is there to nudge and to prompt, maybe is a better word of way of looking at it, your customers to let them know that you're there. 60% of the world's economy is on social media. I'm not trying to outstat you, Jessica, but there's so some of the ones that I got to hand, and I think I mentioned earlier on that 9 out of 10 Gen Z customers will only buy from a brand that they follow on social media. And you know, I think the kind of read through of that in terms of where social is going around the use of video. Obviously, I would kind of look at this given what we're concentrating on, but the way in which consumers are increasingly consuming that video content is such that social becomes a very, very important prop to continue to monetize those customers for your business. And I think that probably speaks true whether you're a brand like Barry that's selling on marketplaces, or whether you're a marketplace yourself.
Tell us again the name of the book that your friend wrote.
I think it's called The Nudge Economy. So, yeah. Okay,
some potential reading out there for anyone that wants to look it up. Thank you for that, sir. I'm gonna come on to you, Barry, if I may. Some retailers, I guess, worry about if they have their own e-commerce website, the massively reduced margins, I guess, of working with a marketplace. So why, if you had your own online site, why would you have a marketplace as well?
That's a great question, because it's a very misconstrued cost analysis for a brand to look at that, and they do constantly look at the margins that they make on their websites, and then look at some of the bigger players in the bigger marketplaces, and question the cost involved of selling on these platforms. However, it's very, very simple in terms of those marketplaces. The diehard brand lovers will always go to their website. They'll always go to their website. They'll always be in with that website, and they will always drive that sale. but the marketplace seller will not go to their website. They trust the marketplace that they're on. They trust the way that it operates, the way it deals with it. And as Tony was saying a bit earlier, there's this misconception that you can go on your website and make loads of margin, because they don't take into consideration how much traffic you have to drive to your website, how much money you have to spend to get that traffic to your website, upfront costs. Whereas on marketplaces, you have almost, depending on what advertising budgets you're spending on the marketplaces, but you almost have that free opportunity until you get the purchase. Whereas on the websites, you have to drive the traffic and hope you get the purchase, whereas you're paying after the purchase on the marketplaces. So, there is plenty of room for both. They are completely different customers. They are completely different people going onto these websites to buy them. And the cost of the marketplaces, although can be quite heavy, if you add in you talked about FBA and the fulfillments on Amazon and logistics, especially at the moment with the logistic costs going up as they are, you just have to build that into your margins and make sure that you have the profitability on your products that you're selling, and not worry too much about which margin is bigger. It's about volume, growth, and drive.
Yeah, I guess it's an important point about customers aren't going to do your website or a marketplace. They're used to being one or the other. They're not necessarily going to go between the two. So a really good point to consider there. I was just playing devil's advocate and being the voice of a random retailer that could have some concerns about working with marketplaces. Thank you, Barry. Glenn, leading on really from what Barry was just talking about, what would be some of the key questions to consider when deciding if to join a marketplace or not, if a retailer's watching?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think there's kind of some key things I would think about as a retailer if I'm considering going on a marketplace. I think, first of all, I'd start with values. Does the marketplace's values align with yours? And that filters through to things like the commercial arrangements. And, back to what Tony touched on a bit there, a commission-only model, where every transaction is incremental and essentially it's risk-free. Another question could be, will you be put in front of your target customer? Or is it a really horizontally broad customer base? And then in terms of being put in front of those customers, is your brand going to be visible to that customer? Or does the marketplace keep that hidden from the customer? Also, one of the questions we get a lot is, how easy is it to get started? Will it be simple to set your products up, get the payment processing all set up? So that's something I would be asking. I'd also be asking, is it easy to manage my products? Can I change the pricing anytime I want? How easy is it to do that? And then probably finally, if it's important for your product set, can you control and ring fence the delivery areas? Or are you going to have to basically go wherever the marketplace is selling? So those would kind of be the key questions I would be thinking about.
Thank you very much indeed. And apologies for fiddling around then. I was just adjusting my blinds to block out this beautiful February sunshine. I hate to block it out, but I was disappearing into the sunlight there. So thank you for those answers, Glenn, as well. I'm going to come back to our audience questions, if I may. So again, panelists, fastest fingers first. Get ready to press your buzzers. This is from Stati. Thank you, Stati, whoever you are. How do marketplace business structure customer segments? How do marketplace business structure customer segments? Who wants to take that one?
I'll jump in. In our case, we have segments of one. So our expertise really is in matching very specific expressions of desire for a particular product to that actual item. So the vast majority of our customers are landing on a product details page as the first thing they see, and then the marketing that they subsequently receive is a function of that specific product. So in that respect, we're personalizing the way in which we interact with customers individually rather than necessarily treating all the people in the segment alike.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone want to add any further to that, or go to the next question?
I would just add that I think marketplaces are an inherently difficult business to set up, as everyone on this call will probably attest to. Not only have you got supply and demand, and you've certainly got different customers, and typically certainly in my experience, this may not hold true for everyone, but when you set out to start a marketplace, Glenn might be a good one to look at for this. You typically have a customer base in mind. We're going to go after X, and certainly the company that I'm working for at the moment, it's around Gen Z, social driven, video aware customers. And then typically you build your product around that sort of thesis. And as you get up and running and you're a couple of years down the line, actually that you then might be able to break down that macro customer into many more micro segments, because you're beginning to understand their shopping patterns, where they live, what they buy, what they spend, how they come back to you and revisit, and how they find you. So I think you kind of start out with one idea, and more often than not, you'll probably shift over to several versions of that one idea over time. But yeah, Glenn might be a good one to look at, given that you're a sort of very specialist platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about devils in the details before. It's all about the data, interrogating the data, asking questions, always being inquisitive, and then it's about testing, and it's testing different tactics for different customer segments, seeing what lands, seeing what doesn't. So and marketplaces can have a serious advantage in that. For us specifically, because we operate in different locations, you're able to test different customer segments in different geographies. Probably, Tony, similar for you, you can test in different regions. So a marketplace really has that advantage.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Sati, for the question. I hope that you will agree that was been well and truly answered for you as well. Someone actually just added a question which we've already answered online, but just for the benefit of the audience watching, if you know anyone that's not here today, or you think would enjoy this content, not only do we record this session for publishing, it goes on to YouTube and LinkedIn and so on. We also do a full write-up summary, which we publish as well. So if you know anyone that has missed out today, they will be able to watch this on various streaming opportunities and so on. So yeah, no one needs to miss out. The other question waiting to be answered is from Anonymous. Someone's a bit shy out there, but thank you, Anonymous. Questions were, should consumers be expected to pay for delivery through a marketplace, even if the retailer, good question, even if the retailer offers free shipping if they sell direct? So should consumers be paying for delivery through marketplaces if the retailer does free shipping on their own website? Who wants to take that?
That's an interesting question.
Really interesting.
Honestly, it's different demographics for different areas of the world. So, for example, the UK and the USA at the moment are demanding free shipping as a consumer. They want free shipping on everything, and that's the way that the e-commerce world has gone. But you go to other places, Germany, France, Spain, in Europe, etc., and sometimes it's actually offensive to offer free postage in some of the countries. So and they wonder why you're not charging postage, and you can lose sales over that. So I think every region is different, and every area is different. You have to do your market research if you're on a global marketplace. You have to. It's not just throw it on and hope. It's about the different criteria for every single marketplace and every single country. Can be quite shocking in the fact that if you're not charging postage from someone in the UK, they'll be questioning, what are you talking about? Everything should be free postage. But when you go somewhere else, that they're questioning why it's not free postage, and should that be different? So I think you've got to be careful on the postage, the postage setup. However, in the UK and across America, if you're not offering free postage at this day and age now, then you are unlikely to get the sale, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's an eternal question, I think, and it's becoming more difficult for retailers because everyone's costs are spiraling.
Yeah. And
then of course it was exacerbated by awful issues in the distribution chain pre-Christmas, with Royal Mail strikes and couriers not being able to get the team they needed to cope with demand, and so there was just problems aplenty. And at the same time, retailers are being pressured to offer free shipping and meet some of those rising costs. It's an ongoing conundrum.
I think one of the other pieces I would add in here is like the end-to-end customer experience and how it's presented to them transparently. So, quite often when we're working with marketplaces, there's a choice about where you surface particular information. So on the PDP, do you already start to educate the customer on who's delivering the article, whether or not there's any difference in the delivery promise? And so I think part of it is around transparency. So, our marketplaces can make different choices about when and where to sort of, share the information that it's not being shipped from the retailer's warehouse, that it's coming from a partner. So I think if you look at that sort of end-to-end journey and understand your customer, do you need to offer free shipping to win them? You can make that choice as part of a customer journey. So I think it does also depend on the vertical, who the customer is, what they're buying. I mean, I'm sure with some of the larger articles, Glenn, like you guys would be dealing with, there are slightly different customer expectations than if you're buying a dress on ASOS that you need for a party on Saturday. So I would argue it depends on your customer and how transparent you are about that cost.
Indeed. Thank you, audience. We've cleaned out the questions so far, and we're actually running, believe it or not, the time has flown by. We're really getting to the point where we need to start to think about to close the webinar off. So I'm going to do another round of round robin, I guess, of questions for my esteemed panelists here, and ask you for some closing thoughts, really. Jessica, I'm going to come to you first, and just as some closing thoughts, any examples of retailers who have been using drop ship and marketplace models to achieve these goals? We could have created a new thing there, drop place, who knows, but you understand the question, hopefully.
Yes. I mean, I've mentioned a few, and I think, again, you've seen some of them in the news, but, Superdrug is a great example of a vertical that we've seen a lot of heat around in the UK, B&Q and DIY as well. One I haven't spoke about today, though, is Debenhams, which I think is, I think when we think about marketplace, like the future is here, you can do it. You can do it really fast. I mean, Debenhams went live in under 8 weeks with Miracle. And I think part of that is because like the ecosystem is completely built out. So, we talk about the difficulty with payments, Miracle can provide support for that, seller onboarding, as part of a platform. And then even things like site optimization. So as you add those marketplace items, how are they discoverable to customers? So I think, the reason that we see so much traction and we see, people willing to go out there and say, we've embraced the drop shipper marketplace model, is because they've seen a lot of success with it. They've seen how quickly they can scale, and the kind of small teams that are associated with managing a marketplace model that allow them to grow revenue while keeping that team small and ensuring that they're profitable in the long run. So I think we've got a lot of great customers that we've already announced. I think we've got a lot of cool ones that will be coming out from under the hood soon. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about where marketplace and dropship is going to go here in the UK.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you so much for your contribution to the panel, and to Miracle again for their sponsorship as well. Tony, closing thoughts. And actually, I'm going to, if I may, Tony, I'm going to ruthlessly jump on with a audience question that's just come in. So I think it will be a good one for you to handle. So thank you, Stati, again, actually, our second question. How do marketplaces handle sort of offer or promotion personalization on a marketplace? Obviously, they can use their own channels for that and customer segmentation and so on, but how would they do it via a marketplace?
So it varies by marketplace. Different marketplaces offer different mechanisms for this. So Amazon, Barry referred to sort of advertising on the marketplace, and Amazon has a very, very substantial sponsored products business that it encourages retailers to use to improve or increase the visibility of their products, and can also then support promotional functionality, like, for example, money off or lightning deals, or buy this, get this for X price off, and so forth. So some marketplaces offer a lot of that sort of offer functionality that mimics some of the promotional functionality retailers may have on their own website. Frugal operates slightly differently in the sense that what we provide is a mechanism to enable sellers to fund additional advertising to drive more visits to their products from outside of Frugo. We actually make it worthwhile for sellers to actually offer more than the base commission on the marketplace, because to do so creates a virtuous circle of sales growth for that retailer. So that's our form of promotion, I suppose.
All right, and I think that answers the question perfectly as well. So thank you, Tony, and thank you for, again, your contribution to the panel today. Much appreciated. Actually, you've all got some lovely feedback from Amy. Thank you, Amy. Amy says that it's super insightful. Thank you. Great opportunities for small brands to grow with big retailers and specialist marketplaces. So some lovely words for the panel there, saying how insightful this has been. So thank you, Amy, for that high praise indeed. Thank you. Neil, coming to you for some final words, please. Wrap up, summarize some of the things you've been sharing with us today.
That sounded like a virtual pat on the back, so thanks, Amy.
Indeed, it was.
I think to sort of taking a step back and listening to what we're all saying reminded me of something that back in 2011, Andreessen Horowitz, the well-known US VC company, said that software is eating the world. And I'd probably like to change that and suggest that marketplaces are eating the world, given sort of how we're talking and where we think that the role of e-commerce is going to go. But for me, I think that, and again, I probably would say this given the vertical I'm working in, but I see the sort of coming together of social content, merchandising, video in this world where kind of marketplaces and that kind of video streaming world of e-commerce come together and really start melding that those worlds of how consumers interact, what they want to see from brands. And I mentioned earlier on that sort of increasing desire for authenticity and kind of moving away from that sort of static 2D model to really being able to engage with brands and products and seeing them in real life. I don't think I'm ever likely to see that kind of virtual changing room scenario that we saw, 10 years or so ago. But, there is a real desire from customers to want to see, not necessarily touch or feel, but see more from the brands and the products that they're shopping. And at the moment, that's a kind of video-driven social world. And for me, I see those worlds blending over the next few years as technology enables brands to have stories embedded a la Instagram on their product pages and that kind of stuff. So for me, that's where I see the world heading.
Got it. Thanks, Neil. And listen, as always, thank you so much for your contribution to the panel. Just to say, audience, if you go to the chat now, you'll also find the link to Miracle's 11 essential best practices. So that link's in there now. Don't miss it, or I'm sure you can find it via their website direct as well. But that link is in the chat right now. Click on it for later. And also, Karen will send the link for that Nudge Ecom book as well. Barry, if a retailer has liked what they've heard today and they were looking for support in launching onto a third-party marketplace, what are their options?
Oh, there's loads of options. I think that firstly, it depends on launching on the marketplace itself, reaching out to the right segment. We talked about that a little bit recently, making sure they're on the right marketplace for them, and then learning the policies and processes of those marketplaces. Really important. Everyone's different. Everyone has different rules and regulations. Very important to do that. Obviously, if they're in health and beauty, they can reach out to me. But if they're in another segment, then there are loads of companies that are working from agency, internal training programs. The DIT can support if you're working with that on a global basis. They're very, very good at matching places and contacts with the marketplaces to brands. That would be a great point of call for me, probably my first point of call. And just working with those marketplaces, don't do too many at once. There's a lot out there. You have to choose what's right for you. We're not yet on Superdrug or Frugo, so I'm sure they'll be contacting me later and asking me why. Very happy to have those conversations. But it's about choosing and scaling at the right speed. If you go and try and do too much too soon, you're going to fail at everything that you're doing. So make your choices, choose your marketplaces carefully, and then execute those marketplaces, and then drive the next one and the next one after that.
Thank you, sir. And Barry, thank you so much for your contribution today as well. It's really appreciated, and some superb insight there as well. Glenn, you're going to wrap this thing up for us. There's no pressure. Just some compelling closing words from you on anything that you've heard today or anything that you'd like to summarize.
Sure. I think, we've all heard there's a lot of excitement around marketplaces, and they are really, really, as Neil says, taking over the world. I think that sometimes there can be some apprehension to joining a marketplace. But what I would say is we're here, marketplaces are here, and it's a great time to really embrace them as part of an omni-channel approach. And I think that by being part of a marketplace, you're going to capture a brand new customer set that you likely wouldn't be capturing on your own, and essentially in a risk-free environment. So my kind of closing remarks would be, now's the time to embrace marketplaces, open yourself up to them, check them out, ask some of those key questions I mentioned before, and really see your brand shine.
Thank you so much, and thank you for perfect closing words. I mean, that is probably the fastest hour I can remember in a long time in terms of these events that we do. What a way to open 2023. Jessica, Tony, Neil, Barry, Glenn, take a bow. Thank you so much for a brilliant start to our calendar year at the Retail Bulletin. I'm a bit speechless by it already. That was such a brilliant session. I look forward to actually watching the recording back as well. So thank you. You made my job easy. So I'm delighted to have worked with you. We're back at 10:30, everybody, for our second session today. So don't go away too long. Do come back and see us. We've got another great panel joining us. But all that's left for me to say right now is thank you to these 5 superstars with me. Thank you, Miracle, for your sponsorship. And we'll see you in about 30 minutes.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.